So we're looking at what's facing our region. My name is Margot Prouse. I'm the chair of the Delta Sierra group in our area. One of the largest grassroots environmental organizations is the Sierra Club. And I'm also active with the League of Women Voters. Many of our local organizations are concerned with climate change, and we're working together to assess what it means for our future, for our area, and the effects it will have on our citizens. The warnings are coming more and more frequently, always moving up the expected timeline than was prior predicted. And it's especially concerning how it disproportionately affects disadvantaged communities. So it's really important that we're talking about climate change, talking about it frequently and with everyone. Even the people that won't speak the words can see the effects and understand.
I don't know it. I think it's Mary Kenovich, but she has to speak, so I don't know what it is.
You need to mute, please. Okay. So it's really important that we start taking action. The League of Women Voters of San Joaquin County and the Delta Sierra Group joined efforts to bring this series of forums. We do have several tech details to review. We're going to ask that participants remain muted, and we ask that you put your questions into the chat. We'll be asking the questions after each presentation. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded, and we expect to have it available on the website soon. Okay, let me start my screen share. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop it per se. Oh, yes. First of all, I'd like to welcome Mary Kenovich. She's a vice president of the League of Women Voters, and she's here to speak a few words about the League of Women Voters and what they are working on.
Good morning and welcome to this wonderful session on climate change and how changes in water are going to affect us here in the Valley. This is very important information to all of us because we know changes are coming and we need to know what kind and how we can respond to them. But my specific task this morning is to introduce to those of you who are unfamiliar with the League to who we are and what we do as members of the League of Women Voters. The passage of the 19th constitutional amendment giving women the right to vote was a huge milestone and cause for celebration. But to the women of the suffrage movement, it was not the finish line. They well understood that having the right to vote was not the end, but merely the beginning of their task to make America a more representative democracy. Making democracy work would require many hands and long-term effort. The League was formed to that end and purpose. Early League efforts actively supported voter registration and legislative processes, promoting things like child labor laws and minimum wage, compulsory education for all, and amazingly enough, equal opportunity for women. Today's League is also involved in environmental issues, the fight against poverty and discrimination, civil rights, reproductive freedom, and healthcare reform. The League also has become a major advocate for campaign finance reform. As an organization, the League is nonpartisan. We do not support parties or candidates. All persons, female and male, Republican, Democratic, or other political party affiliates, or those who are unaffiliated, are welcome. Now, perhaps more than ever, we need to ensure that those who are eligible register, that those who are registered vote, and that voters have the information they need to make informed decisions about casting their ballots. If you want to know more, please access the LWV California, that's lwvc.org, or the national lwvus.org websites. On those websites, you will find statements about principles and positions that the League supports. The San Joaquin chapter also has a website. It's a long URL, so I'm not going to give it to you. But if you will just Google LWV San Joaquin County, it will pop right up. Join us. We welcome your participation. And thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you, Mary. Oh, I almost clicked myself out. Sorry about that. Okay. So today, we are looking at water. We're looking at how wet will we get. We're looking at sea level rise. We're looking at the issues that surround our area. We live in the Delta region where we have a direct connection to the ocean through the San Francisco Bay. We're surrounded by rivers. We have islands and levees. And so this is a topic of great interest to many of in our valley. This morning, let's see, we have one of our elected representatives, Supervisor Kathy Miller, with us to speak a few words on what she's seeing in our area. Supervisor Miller was elected to the 2nd District seat of San Joaquin County in 2014, and she continues her service at this time. She currently represents San Joaquin County in many capacities and continues her leadership on regional water issues and is very knowledgeable about the water issues that surround our area. She serves on the 5 Delta Counties Coalition, the San Joaquin Area Flood Control Agency, and the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta Conservancy. Help me welcome Kathy Miller. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and good morning. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and also Sierra Club for having me here today. This is a really important issue, especially for our region. We describe San Joaquin County as being at the bottom of the bathtub. And as such, we deal with almost every single water issue that there is. We deal with water quality. Half of the city of Stockton's drinking water is pulled directly from the Delta. We deal with folks who live on the Delta. We deal with groundwater issues. We have a significantly overdrafted groundwater basin, which is an opportunity for us in terms of water storage, potential water storage. And the bulk of the residents in San Joaquin County live behind some type of levee. And on the western edge of the city of Stockton, by far our largest population base, all of the western residents are impacted by, as Margot said, by the Delta, by the tides, and by potential sea level rise. And we have been busy in this county for many years. You saw on the different agencies I serve on, the Delta Counties Coalition, that's the 5 Delta counties. San Joaquin has the largest amount of geographical delta in our county, but the 5 counties have worked for over a decade to stop the isolated conveyance. Originally, it was called the twin tunnels. Now it's the tunnel. But any way you slice it, it's an isolated conveyance meant to siphon off our best quality water before it gets to the Delta and reroute it to the South Valley in Southern California. We have successfully stopped that for over a decade, and we are continuing those efforts. I also serve on the Delta Conservancy, which is involved in many conservation projects and looking to implement those throughout the Delta. And I serve on the Flood Control Agency. SJAVCA, which is the San Joaquin Area Flood Control Agency, has been a leader on really progressive flood control, not only projects, but funding mechanisms for those. And we've continued that. We have expanded the original SJAVCA, which was the city of Stockton and basically the county. And we've expanded that to include the cities of Lathrop and Manteca so that levee projects in South Stockton and south through the Mossdale Y will be, they are on the table now. And so, I appreciate being recognized as knowledgeable on water issues, but I am far from an expert. And when I need expert information or advice, your two speakers today are two of the primary people that I go to for that truly expert information and advice. So I think everyone is in for a real treat today. Barbara Barrigan Parilla of Restore the Delta has over the years become a good friend of mine, and she has done probably single-handedly more to educate me on various water issues than anyone else. And Mr. Chris Elias, I'm very proud that I was on the SAJAVCA board that hired Chris several years ago. And Chris is really taking SAJAVCA into a kind of a new frontier. And he's going to talk about some of the really exciting projects that are underway, and also the partnerships that have been developed to provide funding for these very expensive, oftentimes multi-billion-dollar projects in San Joaquin County. So again, thank you for having me here today. I look forward to hearing from both Barbara and Chris as well.
Thank you, Kathy. So that was a good intro to Barbara. Barbara Barrigan Carrillo has worked for 16 years to give Delta residents a voice, ensuring that we have a direct impact on the water management affecting our area, affecting water quality, and the well-being of our communities. Through public education, outreach, advocacy, negotiation, protest, and litigation, and a constant, I don't know how many of you are on her email list, but the insights that she sends out constantly on what's going on are very, very powerful, keeps us very informed, and encourages us to action. Barbara has advanced the idea that the state and federal government must recognize the Sacramento-San Joaquin Bay Delta as part of California's natural heritage. It deserves protection, and while ensuring the inclusion of Delta's environmental justice communities in planning and government processes. She's been very active in our area. We're pleased that Barbara could join us this morning to speak about the health of the Delta. So let's welcome Barbara.
Thank you, Margot. It's good to see everyone this morning. If I fade a little bit at the end when Chris is speaking, I don't want anyone to think it's because I'm not engaged. We are so fortunate in this region to be working with someone of Chris's caliber, who is not only an outstanding engineer and thinker, but understands how good engineering provides and creates great communities. So I'm really excited that you're going to hear from him today, because we're really lucky. And I think he's going to do a lot to help us prepare for the impacts we're going to be dealing with climate change. But if I fade a little bit at the end, I just want you to know I had an accident Wednesday. I had a fall. I'm on a bunch of medicines, so I'm doing the best that I can at the moment. Okay. Let me share my screen here and get you all started. I think most of everyone here knows who Restore the Delta is that's joining us this morning. I think one thing that's important for you to all realize is that, we started years ago with a tagline, fishable, swimmable, drinkable, farmable, which is tied to Clean Water Act. We still work on that. That's never gone away, but we did revise our mission because we realized, as we started learning more and more about the Stockton environmental justice community and the environmental justice community throughout the Delta, which is significant. Stockton has the largest environmental justice community percentage-wise in the state of California, and about 28 to 32% of the entire Delta region is comprised of environmental justice communities. So we really decided that it had to be twofold. We have to ensure that we have a healthy estuary, and we have to work in our policies to make sure that we simultaneously have healthy Delta communities. Let's see. Why am I not getting to my next screen? Bear with me a second. Oh, you're not seeing it, are you? It says I'm screen sharing, but are you seeing my screen or no?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right, great. So today we're going to talk about climate extremes as far as drought and flood. They are two sides of the same coin. I'm going to give you an update on drought, voluntary agreements, the temporary urgency change petition response that we're actually going to be filing Monday. It is the state's plan for suspending salinity and water quality standards for the Delta for the 5th time in the last 11 years versus real solutions from Delta management. And I'm going to talk about flood control as a socioeconomic analysis. I'm not going to talk about it as how projects get done because you have the true expert for that coming up next. So when we talk about who we are, I tell you who we are as an organization, but I like to remind people that we're a 4 million person strong region that is directly dependent on the largest freshwater estuary on the west coast of the Americas. And this is really important because we have a disconnect because of problems with public access and from generations of redlining throughout the Delta region, where a large number of our urban communities are not connected to the estuary, but yet the water quality in the estuary, whether it's for jobs through agriculture, whether it's through strong economics through agriculture, commercial fishing, recreation fishing, all job producers, recreation, whether it's our groundwater that's adjacent in San Joaquin County, or if it is the 72 small drinking water systems in the interior Delta that we still can't get properly mapped by DWR. We are all dependent on the health of this estuary. And one of the things that we've learned with the proliferation of harmful algal blooms, those toxic green masses that you see, is that they create air pollution. And we are very fortunate because we are working in a program with the State Water Resources Control Board staff, the regional board's staff, Duke University, University of North Carolina, San Francisco Baykeeper, on a major water quality HABs testing program that we're launching next weekend. We are going to have a public map up where we're testing sites to help the state collect data, because it's just like COVID. You can't mitigate, you can't treat what you can't track. And we are determined to really get a handle on this problem because we have learned from the World Health Organization that cyanotoxins travel 7 miles from where they are sourced. And because of the wind patterns, that cyanobacteria is blowing directly into South Stockton, into our AB 617 community. AB 617 is a process where an area is designated to receive special help because of air pollution. The other thing we learned just this week, and that's why I was so let me do the PowerPoint at the last minute because everything is changing for us by the day right now. We learned from our colleagues who are coming out to install air quality testing equipment in a couple weeks these are our colleagues from the University of North Carolina. They have genetically traced that cyanobacteria from HABs either generates PM 2.5 or attaches to PM 2.5. We're not sure which yet, and hopefully some of their testing here is going to help us get to some of those answers. But that link between water pollution and air pollution is growing stronger by the day. I always like to show everyone this map and remind them that the interior Delta, which is the fresh part of the estuary, flows into Suisun Bay, San Pablo Bay, and into San Francisco Bay. We are the nursery for an entire ecosystem that runs from Monterey up to Puget Sound. Puget Sound orcas are dependent on Sacramento River salmon. And as they decline, so do the orcas. Last year, we had a 95% mortality rate up in the headwaters for Sacramento River salmon, and the few that make it through the Delta, that they're not making it at all. What we are able to save is some hatchery fishery that's being trucked at the moment. That's not a natural functioning ecosystem or river system. Delta smelt The only few that are being found in trawls for the last 4 years are those which are being introduced from a hatchery. We have seen serious declines in split tail, longfin smelt. All the major fisheries are at lowest levels. And after 16 years of this work, it's just tearing me up. And that is because we're still functioning with the Trump biological opinions and we're mismanaging the Delta. Why is this a people issue? Well, besides the economies that are tied directly to it, in this region, we have 40,000 sustenance fishers. Those are people who fish so that they can eat. And if you take a boat ride out from the Deepwater Shipping Channel on any warm summer evening, you will see hundreds of people out trying to catch fish to put on their table. And you intermix the mercury legacy that's in our fisheries, the cyanobacteria, and other pesticides that remain in the system too long. It is also a public health crisis that's kind of looming before us. And it's not as simple as just telling people, oh, well, don't eat that. Part of it is, for many people, it's cultural. We have a large Southeast Asian community that moved here deliberately because they wanted to have access to water and be able to fish. And legally, fisheries are a public trust resource. So any person for any socioeconomic background should be able to, with a license, go catch a fish and enjoy it. And when we give that up, we're giving up what people in California have through their right of living here. So, climate change impacts in California. The statements that are on this slide, which you may want to screenshot, made it into our 2019 report on climate change, sea level rise, and seismic activity. And I think this is really important to look at a few of these statements, because the climate change assessment from the state pretty much 4 years ago understood what was going to be happening with snowpack, that our snowpack would be disappearing much more quickly than we anticipated, that it would be absorbed into groundwater, that it would evaporate. And we worked on this report when we handed our recommendations to the Newsom administration for their water blueprint plan that is supposed to go with the Delta Tunnel. We're very dismayed because most of the recommendations we made based on this information around drought really haven't been acted on, or they've been put to the side. In 2015 or 16, when we did our first round of testimony around California Water Fix, the twin tunnels at the State Water Board, Restore the Delta was the first group to bring up in its testimony from broad science reading that we were going to have extreme problems putting water in a tunnel, let alone if you don't build the tunnel, just managing the system, because we were not going to have the same runoff, that it was going to melt, it was going to get evaporated by parched soils upstream, and it was going to evaporate. And we were really frustrated because the Department of Water Resources and the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation has made the same mistake year after year, and they've done it again this year, where they allow too much water out during December and January to appease senior water right contractors upstream and downstream. For agricultural uses, they don't hold on to the water for temperature management or to take care of the Delta. So now we have a temporary urgency change petition that is out. Comments are due on this on Tuesday. And we predicted all this was going to happen. And my response repeatedly to the Water Board and DWR is, if our scrappy little group with one really brilliant policy analyst and a bunch of interns could figure this out, then why can't the Department of Water Resources and the Bureau of Reclamation and build that into their management plan? Well, here's what happened, what we learned yesterday. If you take a look at these numbers, our major reservoirs are at 33% of capacity, 38% of capacity. They have less storage in them than they did even last year. They're well below average for this time of year. Then they went to measure the snowpack. This is a photo from yesterday. We found this on Twitter yesterday. Snowpack measurement, bleak indicator of the deepening drought and water supplies for the warm months ahead. The water packed into the snow was 4% of average at south of Lake Tahoe, 38% statewide. It's going to be 90 degrees this week. What's going to happen to that snow at the end of this week? Exactly what happened last year. So we are going to see very quick depletions in our reservoirs. The temporary urgency change petition, let me stay on the slide for a second, that we are responding to actually describes in it the strong possibility of loss of salinity control for the Delta this year. And you have to remember, if you look back at this first picture, the Delta is the freshwater part of the estuary. This is an estuary where you move from freshwater to saltwater. Fish have evolved. Our economy has evolved to match that natural increase in salinity. And the X2 line, which is where it's a technical term for where water becomes, moves from being brackish to fresh, is here in the Antioch region. Okay. The interior Delta has been fresh, and we have based an economy on that. But because of repeated mistakes made by the Department of Water Resources that can't continue to be made with climate change impacts, this is not managed control. If climate change is going to change salinity and water quality conditions here, then where the state is completely failing is, how do you create a just transition for the 4 million people who live here? We talk about just transitions for coal. You have to manage a just transition if how we manage the Delta is going to change. That's not what's happening. It's willy-nilly, lack of planning, and very accidental in how changes are going to come about. If the saltwater seeps beyond Frank's Track, where they have a saltwater barrier in the Delta right now, that's over on the Contra Costa side, west side of the Delta, it is going to take a great deal of flow and water afterwards to get the salt cleaned out of that area. It will impact a major fishery. It will impact agriculture. It could impact drinking water for Contra Costa Water District. There's a lot at stake. So we're very concerned about what is happening this year. We know in the Delta that with climate change impacts, we are going to have more extreme flood events, reduced runoff in the Delta watershed, warmer water temperatures, and reduced freshwater flows that are going to alter our environmental conditions. That is a picture of a harmful algal bloom that I took last year near where a Morelli boat launch downtown. And it's the invasive weed at the top. If you look at the bottom, that is the green fiber of the toxic algae. Levels were 200% over the danger level throughout San Joaquin County last year. We have gone from having 3 or 4 incidents of HABs in the Delta, which are created by warm water temperatures, sunlight, nitrate load, lack of flow, and definitely circulation problems where the Delta dead ends at places that were built out 100 years ago. You have to tackle all those problems. So we are working in our program so that we could start pushing on real mitigation strategies that tackle all of the above. We're really worried about this year. We've gone from 3 or 4 incidents a year in the Delta to over 24 last year that were reported. And what happens is where we do start with the HABs problems downtown, the cyanobacteria backs out into the San Joaquin River, and then it goes up to Smith Canal. It goes up to the Calaveras River. It goes out to Windmill Cove where people recreate. And then it finds new spots to dead end. And in those new spots, you have new blooms that create an underwater, what they call benthic mat, where the algae lives forever. And then it repeatedly comes back every year and expands. So this is a major climate change impact for us in the Delta, also throughout all of California, but our job is to take care of the Delta first. One thing too, before I move on from harmful algal blooms, just backing up here a second about the snowpack. Newsom administration also released voluntary agreements for the Sacramento River. Every 3 years under the Clean Water Act, we're supposed to have a triennial review of water quality standards and flows for the Delta. It hasn't happened in 26 years. Restore the Delta is working on a major protest to pursue alternatives and other type of efforts presently to push the plan to get done. Phase 1 of the plan was done for the San Joaquin River, where we're supposed to start seeing increased flows implemented next year. It wasn't perfect according to science, but it was much better than what we're getting right now. On the Sacramento River, they've dropped a voluntary agreement framework that is so deeply flawed. It's going to put even less water, the clean water that we receive in the Delta on the Sacramento River side, into the estuary. It is based on the Trump biological opinions, which were a disastrous baseline. I think now I'm so angry, I'm going to rename them the Trump, Newsom, Biden biological opinions, because our state and federal government isn't getting the science done and fixed that was corrupted under the Trump administration. They've actually weakened the baseline for fishery protections. The voluntary agreements as proposed would also pay rice contractors upstream, the Sacramento River settlement contractors and exchange contractors, $740 million of taxpayer money a year to buy their water, supposedly to put into the Delta. The problem is that Department of Water Resources will not release for us with these agreements the proposed elevation of pumping out of the Delta at the federal and state pumps near Tracy. So without us seeing that information, there's no way of knowing if that water actually makes it all the way through to the estuary to nourish the water system out into the bay, or if it's all going to be exported and further damage the hydrology of the Delta. We also fundamentally have a real problem. Water right under the law is a right to use water for beneficial use. It is not that you own the water and get to sell it in perpetuity. And we recently filed an amicus brief on a federal case about curtailments that really questions how water rights were earned and achieved in California when they were based on massive genocide and discrimination, which kept people of color from being able to own riparian water rights and senior water rights throughout California. It's an uncomfortable subject for some people, but if you think about it, that water rights system was created before women could vote or even say how property could be managed. So I want to leave that for people for perspective. Let's see, we talked about the degraded water quality. Chris is going to talk to you about all the important flood projects that he is leading on here in the Delta. I'm trying to watch my time here in San Joaquin County. And this slide is really important. It explains it all. If you are a kindergartner today, there's a 1 in 5 chance that your home here will be flooded. The source for that is the study that was done by San Francisco Estuary Institute. Predictions on the climate vulnerability assessment by the Delta Stewardship Council explain that we are looking at 17,000 parcels of land being flooded in the Delta in the next 50 years, with a large percentage of them falling in South Stockton and San Joaquin County. Chris will talk about the Van Buskirk Project today. We are extremely grateful that he has been able to get that moved up with the Army Corps of Engineers as a priority project, because that is one of the most dangerous flood points in the Delta. And as has happened across the United States historically, red line communities have had their newer homes built in floodplains. And that is a large historic environmental justice community. And environmental justice communities just don't recover from flood. So we're really excited that that project is advancing, and we're really happy with his leadership and understanding that there are opportunities with flood projects to do wonderful multi-benefit elements to them, where you can restore wildlife, you could improve nature, access for the public, and reconnect people to waterways. And so we're almost done hiring a new organizer who is going to be working on organizing the community in San Joaquin County around flood control and around these projects. In addition to the project at Van Buskirk, there are flood control projects that need to happen. I'm going to go back to conveyance at Paradise Cut, which is upstream in San Joaquin County, that will take the pressure off of our urban levees. There's one at Mossdale Track. And a project that we are working on at Restore the Delta that becomes more real every week is we are very interested in restoration of Mormon Slough as a way to mitigate HABs and to do really important connection of urban communities back to our waterways. We see there are dozens of environmental, social, and economic justice benefits. We are working with a broad coalition of local people and state representatives to figure out what is it going to take to get this project started. And maybe if I get it started, maybe I'll see some of it before my life ends. Is kind of the way I'm looking at this. It's a long-term investment in project. Really learned this week from Chris that when Sajafka voted against this, it was because an economic benefit was not understood by the Army Corps of Engineers 22 years ago. And that's all I could say is we're going to get them on that one this time, because the economic analysis is already being done, and the economic benefits to help lift people out of poverty through that community in downtown Stockton are huge. I think this time we've got the right team to work on what is an economic environmental benefit so that we could actually make something happen. I'm not going to talk too much about Delta Conveyance. There's an environmental impact report coming out in mid-May. Restore the Delta did serve on the committee with the Design Construction Authority to make recommendations to the project. And at the penultimate session, I resigned because I could not get the answers we needed around water quality, HABs, and air quality issues related to construction. And those things are still not handled, in my opinion. And until those answers can be provided in a real way, we can't support the project. Also, because the voluntary agreements are so bad, the state is making the same mistake again that they have made for 15, 16 years. You can't decide if you're going to have a Delta tunnel until you answer the flows issue. And you can't answer the flows issue till you get real about the drought issue. So once again, they have the cart before the horse. And we are going to do everything in our power to force them to reverse that order. I want to say one thing at the end too. Not everything is doom and gloom. We have great partners that we're working with on these projects locally: Little Manila Rising, Edge Collaborative, Third City Coalition, Greenlining the Hood. With Our Words, their Reinvent Stockton Foundation. They have all been trained extensively the last 2 years on water. And they're learning how climate and water has to get incorporated into their work. So we are building a team of leaders. We have 15 new interns that are from this region that are at universities all over California who are working for us, and they are exhausting me. So I think that's a good sign. We're going to be out with them with the water board, training them on how to do HABs testing next week. We had Metropolitan Water District out for a 6-hour environmental justice tour this past Wednesday. And that was a historic day. And yes, we don't agree about the tunnel. they're listening to us about what our concerns are about, I think, voluntary agreements. But we all agree these flood control projects have to get done, and they want to assist us and SJAFCA in getting them done. We all agree the HABs problem has to be solved. And so, you know, I guess it comes with maturity, with an organization. We're working with people the best we can where we can solve problems. And we're just kind of sticking to our moral center and being as obstinate as ever when the solutions just don't make sense. So, and I think I've talked too long. So if there's a minute or one or two questions, I don't want to eat up Chris's time.
If I could remind people to put their questions into chat, we can manage them from there.
Yes,
And
and
if
we did say that we would try and get Barbara's questions right after her presentation, and then we forgot to alert people about that.
Well, you know what? I'm doing okay for right now. So, and I don't want to eat up Chris's time. If Chris wants to go, I'll hang. I may just go off screen a little bit so I can whine about how I'm feeling, and then I'll come back on. Okay.
Sounds good. Okay,
Okay, so questions in chat.
okay.
I do not see any.
No, we don't have any yet, so.
So
we'll
we're
take it from there.
and Barbara's going to stay on line as long as she can. Thank you very much, Barbara. And I appreciate that it's not all gloom and doom, but
Quite.
it's hard. These are such hard issues. Okay. So at this point, we'd like to bring you Chris Elias, the Executive Director of the San Joaquin Valley Flood Control District. Chris is the Executive Director for the San Joaquin Area Flood Control Agency. Under the direction and leadership of the Board of Directors, Chris carries out the mission to study, plan, and implement flood protection projects, reducing the risk to all our people, structures, and our economy. He'll be speaking today about flood risk resilience, adapting to climate change in the lower San Joaquin River Basin, which is us. So please welcome Chris Elias. Thank you.
Good morning. Am I coming through okay?
You're coming through well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm truly delighted this morning to be here and to appear before an august body of the League of Women Voters with a very strong history of advancing democracy in our society. I salute you and I thank you for all that you do to advance the interests of our community. I also want to acknowledge your coalition with the Sierra Club. Prior to migrating to San Joaquin Valley, I was the treasurer for the League of Conservation Voters in Santa Clara County. So we did do a lot of work together, as to advance environmentalism, in Silicon Valley. So I have experience and common interest with you, and I'm truly delighted that two of you kind of have a common ground to advance this common threat that we all face as a community, and that's the extremes of climate change that's impacting our waterways as well as our water supply and everything else that depends on it. So thank you very much for having me this morning. So with that, and I also want to acknowledge, obviously, the reason why I'm here today is because 4 years ago, the board of directors of San Joaquin Area Flood Control Agency, under leadership of then Chair Supervisor Miller, was instrumental in bringing me on board, interviewed me, and finally made the decision to hire me. So I feel really fortunate, to be a part of the community, finding ways to solve problems that impact all of us together. So Supervisor Miller, I thank you, and your work continues to endure. So with that then, let me launch into my presentation this morning. And let's see, let's go to the slideshow. Okay. So today, I will speak about who we are, the San Joaquin Area Flood Control Agency, and then focus on some of the projects we're working on to address the trend that we're facing in the area of sea level rise and increases in runoff in our rivers. So who we are is that the San Joaquin Area Flood Control Agency was formed almost 27 years ago. And again, just like Supervisor Miller said, we initially started with the city of Stockton and the county, and then to address at the time critical issue of flood protection, but limited to the city of the metropolitan area of Stockton. And since then, it has expanded to include the cities of Lathrop and Manteca, so as to give us a much more regional focus, because flood doesn't stop at boundaries. It continues and affects all of us. So here is the boundary of Sejavka. Primarily, our work focuses in obviously the Stockton metropolitan area and the Reclamation District 17. So just to put it in terms of original context, we go from Stockton all the way through the Western Ranch area, which is the tan color, and then all the way through Manteca to the right, to the east. So basically, Western Ranch to Manteca, then through Stockton Metro. The salmon color is as the central Stockton, and then the olive color is North Stockton. So the agency is governed by a 9-member board, and with 2 representatives from the county, 2 from the city of Stockton, City Council of Stockton, 2 from the City Council of Lathrop, and 2 from the City Council of Manteca, and then 1 member of the public, and that's in the middle, right, Mike Morowitz. So obviously you can see Supervisor Miller is one of the, I think she's the longest serving member of our agency, on the board of agency, and really very grateful for the kind of leadership and vision she's shown over the years. So the agency's mission statement, revised about 3 years ago. It used to be about 75 words, but now we cut it down to simply 7 words to say reduce and manage the region's flood risk. So basically to cover our region. So to share with you the level of threat that we face, it's very important to understand the watersheds that impacts our region. So we go from Calaveras watershed to the northeast, then all the way down to San Joaquin watershed to the south, and then McCormick in between, and then Farmington Reservoir. So this is basically that's the map that you're looking at that highlights all those watersheds. A couple of days ago, I was in a meeting with a member of the public, and the gentleman one of the gentlemen over there then told me at the time that it never floods in Stockton. And then that kind of prompted me to go back in history and look at what's happened in our community. What you see here is an excerpt of the local paper at the time, back in 1958, where it says, experts said flood will never happen in Stockton. But now, first time in history, so much rain fell in short space of time, the city manager of Stockton says. So that's the paper. Those are not my words. And here is what had happened at the time. Was the map you're looking at is in the Stockton area, and the highlighted color is the Mormon Channel, and it overtopped. That overtopping resulted in the flooding of entire community. And then the Army Corps of Engineers then came and then created the diverting canal at the time to move water out from the undersized capacity channel to move it to a bigger channel, which is the Calaveras River. Well, we know what happened after that. So when they move the water in that way and then they don't have enough capacity, you have the frequency of overtopping, which then impacts our community. So earlier on, Barbara spoke and referenced the Van Buskirk Park as well as the Mormon Channel. So I thought I would highlight that here, and then we speak to that as when I talk about the bigger project that we're working on in the area. But what's very important is the Van Buskirk Park. So I'm going to use my cursor here for a second. The Van Buskirk Park is right there at the bottom left. If you look at the regional wastewater treatment plant, just below, right below Highway 4, and then right here is the Van Buskirk Park. That used to be a golf course and community park that the city of Stockton is now trying to repurpose. They're going through a master planning effort, and we're trying to find a way to work with them, since it's right adjacent to the river, to see that there are some opportunities for multi-benefit to protect the Conway community, which is down here. This is highly developed community, but then it's also an underserved community. So we'll talk about that later as to how we connect basically the challenges of flood risk with multi-benefit opportunities to improve lives and livelihood. Okay, so we talked about another flood. So here it is. This is what happened back in 1955. That's a picture of it. Again, in 55, this gentleman is plying his boat right on the streets of Stockton, and he had to have had the depth to keep his boat afloat. And then this is where we are, 1958. Gentleman, this is right in front of his home, and the water in front of his home is now up to his chest. Yes, it does happen. So this is a picture of 1958. And so the question becomes, what are we doing about it? So additional regional context to get into what we're doing about it. We have our area is 25% urban and 75% rural based on acreage. We have an approximate population of 500,000 people in the lower Delta area, in the lower San Joaquin and Delta South area, but the county population is well over 760,000. And then obviously I talked about member agencies before, and then within that footprint, we have 29 reclamation districts. All these districts are predominantly landowners, essentially all have interest in flooding or reducing the risk of flooding to their operations, to their assets. So, but another important story there is that San Joaquin has one of the highest number of reclamation districts within this county. That means then each reclamation district is a government entity that you have to work with. And I believe either we are either second or about the same number of reclamation district with LA County. So additional context to bear in mind is that when we look at our region, we're always looking at how do we best position our community to compete with others, both regionally as well as statewide and nationally. So one of those comparisons is basically looking at it from the lens of flood risk. You can see to my left of the grid that the city of St. Louis is protected to the 500-year level. That's the kind of protection they have for their community. So what do you think happens? So they have a much more resilient community. Then it's then easier to attract investments because you can promise those investments that the risk of flooding is very reduced, very much reduced. Obviously, Tacoma, Washington, Kansas City, and Dallas, they're all way above us in terms of level of flood protection. And then when it comes to our region, then you look at Sacramento. Sacramento is now really up there. They're really making marks and improving. And then Stockton is still on the average about 100-year flood protection in most areas, but not all. And then Lathrop is also in the 100-year flood protection area. But then again, I just want to kind of take this in context, compare that to where the others stand. So, and that should give you a reason for pause to say, why is our level of flood protection lower when in fact we have similar or even worse threat from sources of river in our area? So the thrust of our talk today, it has to do with climate change. What I'm showing you here is a hydrograph that shows in the lower San Joaquin River, which is the main stem, the largest watershed with that for our area, back in 2017, the hydrograph there that is deep green, it shows the amount of water that was coming through that corridor, which is below the Vernalis junction. So now, that right there is approximately 100,000 CFS, cubic feet per second of water flowing through with the rainfall we had in 2017. Now, the Department of Water Resources state has conducted a study that shows that if you were to look 50 years hence, that peak that you see in the middle, the deep green, would triple and become 300,000 CFS. So basically, at the same point, the same location, if you look down the road 50 years from now, you'll be looking at 300,000 CFS. That's triple the flow coming down the channel. Well, if it nearly overtopped in 2017, then you can imagine what would then happen a few years from now. 50 years isn't too far. So I just want you to understand that. So the table that you see on the right-hand side shows the existing flow of 101,000 CFS, and then the 305,000 CFS 50 years hence. So if we did nothing, the flow from 2017 would result in the kind of graph, in kind of a map that you see on the right-hand side. So if the overtopping had occurred below Vernalis, this area would have been all flooded. Okay, so this is just to put some regional context to it. Again, the magenta color, this is essentially a Western Ranch area where my cursor is. And then you have Highway 5. This is Highway 5 right here. And then Highway 99 over here. So you can see that the depth of flooding, the further east you go, essentially is 3 to 5 feet. And then as you go left, it goes anywhere from 10 to 15 feet, depending on your location. And then if we had to have then the 200-year flow coming through, you can see that our community becomes essentially walloped or enveloped with serious flooding for our entire community. The entire basin gets flooded to anywhere from 5 to 15 feet, again, depending on where you are. So that's, I just talked about the main stem, which is Lower San Joaquin. That isn't the only threat we're facing. Just like as 1958 and 55, we have the New Hogan Reservoir, which is east of Stockton. That reservoir currently holds the capacity of anywhere between 13 to 16,000 CFS, cubic feet per second of water coming through it. In the current year, we're looking at about 12,000, but with the projection from the Department of Water Resources, we're going to be looking at that reservoir facing the deluge of 38,000 cubic feet per second. That's triple the amount of flow coming through there. And when they leave the reservoir, where they're heading? Straight for Stockton. So this is essentially, I'm kind of rehashing the map so you can kind of put some geographical context to where the reservoir is, which is, the reservoir is right here, New Hogan Reservoir or dam, and then it feeds right into Calaveras, the old Calaveras, and then from there hits downtown Stockton. It's only about 30 miles east of Stockton. So, and when that water leaves there, about 300,000 people will be at the mercy, of the flow. So I posed the question, so what are we doing about it? So the board, in its wisdom, 3 years ago, made a decision after pondering this question, recognizing that the Lower San Joaquin region has the greatest potential for increased flood flows of all Central Valley regions based on the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. This is the state plan now, climate change analysis. And then when you couple this then with the flow coming from Calaveras, the impact or the threat magnifies. The climate change projections are for this. They told us we should use it for planning purposes. But then we have projects we have to build now. Question then is, what then do we do with those projects? Then our board decided we need to put together a set of policy framework to guide our work. And that policy framework, essentially the chart that you see on the right-hand side is the process they went through to come up with the information that's the narrative that's on the left-hand side. So the policy consideration was, well, make sure that whatever levee improvements we make or any flood protection improvements we make, we include a factor of safety to address the uncertainty in climate change of flood flow projections and then sea level rise. That's 3 years ago. That's our board. And then also includes a plan to make the time to acquire additional real estate within close to the footprint of the levees we're building, so that if we have to raise the levee, we have the room to do so. Because every time you raise a foot of a levee, you have to go 3 feet out to be able to give it the strength that it needs to withstand hydraulic impact or loading. And then they also directed staff to ensure that we engage with all the scientific bodies for periodic reviews and updates as the state of science of climate change progresses. That's board policy. That's what Supervisor Miller and her team on the board put together to guide our work. So what are those work that we're doing? Now, let me get into some of the projects, just to kind of give you a few snapshots of the ones we're working on. This right here is the entire Lower San Joaquin River project. And when the study started a few years ago, almost about 14 years ago now, the collaboration between SJAVCA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the state, essentially we're looking at improving this levee system that kind of abuts the Lower San Joaquin River, which is the main area of threat to our community right here. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers at the time said, okay, we'll continue to work with you, but what we need to do is we find that we cannot support levee improvements in this corridor. Because if we do, then we'll be guilty of incentivizing you to make an unwise use of the floodplain. Translation, we're not going to fund your effort, but we'll go over here because there's more population in this area and we need to do something there. So that's what gave birth to us now having to have two projects called Phase 1 and Phase 2. So Phase 1 is Talk to Metro, which is from north of Western Ranch to North Stockton. And then Phase 2 then is Reclamation District 17, which is Western Ranch all the way to Lathrop and Manteca. So Phase 1 is a $1.4 billion project that the federal government has estimated that's what it's going to cost to do all these improvements around here and to protect 120,000 people in the immediate footprint. The number is much bigger than that, but I wanted to kind of give you some context as to those that will suffer the immediate impact of anywhere from 3 feet and above in terms of inundation. And then it would also prevent $28 billion in damages. That is serious. We're talking about homes, we're talking about businesses, we're talking about public infrastructure. And what we'll be doing is we'll be making additional some improvements along 203 miles of levees in this area. And earlier on, we Barbara referred to the Van Buskirk area. So what happened was the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers put priorities in each of these areas. So we have what they call 6 priority areas. So the first priority is right here where my cursor is, where next to the pink color. That's right there is the Brookside community. That's where we are starting right now. Construction starts either late this year or early next year. So we're making some advancements. And then we'll then proceed to the north of that, and then from there forward. Meanwhile, we got wind of the fact that the community, the city was trying to make some improvements around this area, which is where my cursor is, which is where Buskirk is located, right here. Then we decided, you know what? That was going to be the 6th priority. So now we've convinced the Army Corps of Engineers to, after they finish building phase 1 of this right here, of Brookside, to now pivot to the Buskirk corridor. Okay, so that's what Barbara was referencing, and it took a lot of work to convince them to get out from their already written priority list to now change that to now focus on the southern side. So what this work would involve, obviously, is that there's a lot of federal dollars coming to build the project. There's a lot of state dollars coming to build the project. There's also local dollars, meaning we, all of us together here, also have a stake in contributing to that, because when the federal government brings in the dollar, they will also want you to match it to some extent. So for this project, let me just put it in context for you. For every $1 that the federal government brings, we have to put in 10 cents, meaning the community of San Joaquin, you and I and our neighbors. And we're going to need to improve 23 miles of levees. And then those federal dollars create jobs. An example of that was the effort to improve levee systems here includes what we call the geotechnical investigation, where you go and then bore holes in the area to kind of find the strength of the soil and then know the kind of soil you need to put in place to make that levee system very strong. Kleinfelder is a local firm. It's a local geotechnical firm that just got hired by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for a contract of $17 million to do that boring. If we didn't have this project, they wouldn't get that investment. They wouldn't get this work. And the people that work there are your neighbors and my neighbor. So we're getting flood protection. We're getting infusion of funds into our economy through and then creating jobs, protecting the people. And then the construction for this piece, which is the Brookside corridor, starts in 2023, and it's going to last for about a year. But the rest of the project from here all the way down to here will run through 2030 total. It's about a 10-year project, basically. So that's first. Another project we're working on is the Smith Canal Gate project. And I'm not getting into all the details, but I just want to kind of give you the flavor of what we're doing to really counter the effects of sea level rise. What this area is, for those of you that may live in the area, this right here, where my cursor is a Stockton Country Club and golf course right here. Then this is Atherton Cove right here. Then right beneath that, then over here is the Lewis Park. And then beyond that, you have homes around this area. And this area has some high-end neighborhood as well as mostly disadvantaged community. So the effort we're making is to prevent flood, and this whole area is mapped into the floodplain, meaning for homes that are in this corridor, they are all mandated to pay flood insurance if they have a federally backed mortgage. Okay, so that means if you can't afford a mortgage, you can buy a home there. So what we've done then is work with them to self-assess themselves, to put the money aside to build this project. So this project is part of the overall federal project. However, we are taking the lead earlier on so that we can get it done ahead of time and then get the residents to then go back and be able to adjust their mortgages and remove or reduce those flood insurance premium, because those are killers. In some instances, some homes are having to pay between $6,000 to $8,000 a year. And for our grandmas and grandpas who live in this neighborhood, who are on pension, that is a hard hit. Okay, and in some instances, it's resulted in a situation where when they're trying to sell a home, the people come to buy it and find they have to pay for insurance, they walk away. Those are real stories. So that's another one. But the critical part of this whole thing is going to involve a flood wall built here, and then there will be a gate And this gate would remain open 98% of the time, so that residents can go in and out, no problem. But in the event we have sea level rise coming, then this gate will shut down, but with ample warning to the residents that you have the tide coming, and it's going to be one that could overwhelm your community, and the gate will close. So it's going to be remotely monitored with all the bells and whistles so that neighbors know that this is happening. Here's the project in construction, the Smith Canal Gate project. So the work is advancing. We are right now, we just finished our second construction season, and we're preparing for the third one. And the project is it's about 61% complete. And as far as budget is concerned, it's approximately 60% spent on the project itself. So I talked about phase one of Lower San Joaquin River. So spoke about Smith Canal Gate project. And now this is phase two, which is phase two. Then again, remember, is from Western Ranch all the way down to Manteca. And I want you to kind of pay close attention here at the bottom where there's a Dryland Levy. This Dryland Levy right now stops right here. We are working to extend this Dryland Levy to the east. And the reason is because we need to tie the levee to highlands so that in the event there's an overtopping that comes from this Lower San Joaquin River here, it doesn't overtop this area and then aim for the community. So that work is already underway, and I'm going to talk a bit more about it. And why do we care about it? We do, because even though the federal government at the time said they didn't want to fund it, we decided to go ahead and do a locally led effort because we have an existing population of well over 50,000 people in this basin that need protection. And we have also key critical infrastructure for our entire county. The county hospital is right here. The new VA clinic is in this basin. Then we have schools, 32 schools, fire stations, wastewater treatment plants that if it gets inundated, then the whole community can flush. Okay, then we have obviously our highway corridor that is very important for our supply chain activities that take out offload from the port and the rails, and then those all will be impacted. And that also has severe impact on employment. So speaking about Dryland Levy, so this is the work we're doing. Just kind of give you an example of the study that's going on right now to plan, design, and eventually construct. So that the Dryland Levy ends right here. So we're going to abandon this piece of land and then create a new corridor here so that we can bring this Dryland Levy south further and then go a bit north and then to the east. For those that live in Manteca area, this will be close to just slightly west of Union Avenue in Manteca. That's about where the Dryland Levy is going to end. And then, so that's just kind of give you an idea of what kind of things we're looking at. So our next steps on this one then is to do the following, the study we're doing right now that will eventually culminate in the release of a CEQA document along with the design of the project we are trying to build. So earlier on, Barbara talked about Parallax Cut expansion. That's another project we're working on. So this is looking south on Parallax Cut. Right here is the Lower San Joaquin River as it comes through right here. And then the cut, see, is right there. So this is the river as it comes through. And this whole place is all silted up. That's choking off the capacity of the river. And what we're trying to do is to expand that by restoring the channel so that the water can easily flow. Then that becomes like a relief valve whenever we have increased flow coming down the river. So then we can work with the community, use these properties around here to park the water, percolate the water, and then the rest can then go back into the channel and right into the delta. So here is that project involves working with the state of California. So we've entered into a funding agreement with them to study this project. The board was kind to authorize this entry into the memorandum of agreement with the state, and with about 20 reclamation districts to advance this work. It's a lot of negotiations, a lot of herding cats, but willing cats, and they are very good people that have their own interests. I want to be sure that their interests are taken care of. And it's a really, really great cause, with all our people coming together and recognizing that we all face the same threat. Then let's find a common solution to the problem.
Chris?
So here are the reclamation districts, some of them that have signed on so far, into that agreement.
Chris, we probably need to go to questions soon.
Okay, so thank you very much. And I'm concluding right now. And so basically, I hope this gives you some insight into your role, our role in protecting lives, livelihoods, and environment in our community. I hope that this kind of resonate with you in terms of the kind of threat that we face and the need for us to continue to work together. And as far as next steps is concerned, you, the members of the League of Women Voters, have a big role to play in working with us. We hope that you pay attention to our suggested activities and vote. With your 102-year history of positively impacting generations, this is one more way where you can make your mark for generations, so that your children and grandchildren will continue to have an improved quality of life and livelihoods. With that, we'll go into questions.
Excellent. Thank you. That was jam-packed.
Yes.
So if people can put their questions into chat, Mary Kenovich of the League of Women Voters is going to read some of the questions.
Okay.
And I think Barbara is still on the call as well. So, yeah, there we go. So
Okay.
we'll go from there.
All right. So first question is from Bill Loiko. What can we as everyday citizens do to help RTD or Sajavka, not just donations?
We put out calls to action all the time. We ask people to make comments at State Water Resources Control Board meetings. We invite people to join us for conferences where we're presenting. We're going to be starting, post-COVID to do some membership meetings with more engagement opportunities. And there's definitely going to be, if you're interested, joint comment letters. We do joint comment letters all the time to get policy information out. There's going to be work that is going to be done that Chris and I are both going to be working on at the legislature for state funding for these flood projects locally. You can help us encourage Senator Susan Eggman to help support those flood projects. You could also help her to encourage her to oppose the bill by Assembly Member Hurtado to eliminate the State Water Resources Control Board. Yeah, that's actually a thing. So those are direct ways you can help us right now. Once we have our map up for the harmful algal blooms program, as people are out recreating and doing things and observing things, they can take photos, they can report to us if they see problems, and we'll be able to incorporate community observation into the testing and the research that we do as well. Also, because we are bringing on a local organizer to really focus on flood control and climate change impacts around water, helping us promote events and getting people to events locally is something that we could always use assistance with, which will start happening. And we bring them on probably towards the end of May, beginning of June.
Next question. The next question is from Susan Loiko. In 1995, property owners were required to fund levee improvements. Will the funding from the feds pay for the entire proposed project, or will local residents, farms, and businesses be assessed again for any of the improvements?
Yes, the projects. Well, yeah, that's a good question. So yes, the federal government at the time, they did the bulk of the funding, and they're still doing the bulk of the funding today. So the the split on how the funding is structured is that the federal government money accounts for about 65% for construction, and then 24%, 25% by the state contribution, and then we, the locals, then put up 10%. So our contribution with the state amounts to 35, and then to match the federals, which is 65% for construction project. But for the study that leading up to the construction is usually 50-50. So that's how it is split. So right now, the improvements that were made back in the 50s now need some upgrading and need the additional beefing up to counter not just the effects of the threats of flooding from conventional flows, but also now with climate change impacts. And we'll be coming to you as residents, to look at all the options. But any option you come up with has to involve, again, a three-way party approach to funding the project, and hopefully we can get the federal government to continue to be a partner in all these efforts. The one for the $1.4 billion project, right now we're kind of in agreement with the state and the federal government that will use the money that we received as a refund, a reimbursement from the federal government many years ago, to continue to service our local share. But eventually that money will run out, and we'll need to raise additional assessment locally to support the amount of money that we need. That 1.4 billion translates into about $140 million that we need to raise locally. But we're doing everything we can to stretch the dollars with the reimbursement we received, and then and all the support we're getting from the state to really continue to move the projects forward. We're doing our study right now, and we'll come back to the community to share with you what that assessment would involve, what it would look like.
Okay. The next question is from Margot. Sacramento has the weir that they can sometimes use to take excess overflow. Is there any chance for such a concept in our area?
Yes. So that is the Parallax cut. That is the so basically, if you can imagine the weir that takes the water all the way to Yellow Bypass, the same thing is happening with the Parallax cut. The intent is that when that flow comes, either 10 or 15 or 50 years from now, the Parallax cut expansion will have a weir there that will help to move the water and move the water away from the community and move it right back into the channel, into Old River, and then right into the Delta. And then that's that. And then, but also in addition to the weir, we also need to restore the channel itself, the capacity, to give it the capacity and the room to absorb that water.
Okay. So, and then Susan Loico asks, what impact, if any, does climate change and continued projected reductions in rain and snowpack have on the actual need for the proposed flood control improvements?
Because we are experiencing climate whiplash with climate change, we're going to see something like a 4 or 5-fold increase in inundation on the San Joaquin River system. And when you put that together with storm surge and sea level rise, you are looking in that Van Buskirk work area, according to the 4th climate change assessment by the state, it's 7 feet of overtopping on those levees during extreme storm events. So that's why we keep saying it's two sides of the same coin. Droughts are going to be very long and extended and difficult. And then it's going to rain all at once. And you have to have a system that can manage that rain all at once. And ultimately, they can capture that rain and replenish groundwater systems and get water back into rivers and streams to make them healthier.
Yep. Okay. And last question, I guess, is Jane's. Are there flood risks in the county north of Stockton, in Lodi and north of there?
Yes. There are communities in Lodi that also face the risk of flooding. I believe last data I saw says that about 26% of the community faces the risk of flooding. Yeah. And so our county is the one that is our county flood control water conservation district does everything it can to maintain the channels up in that area. to protect that community. So they run the operations and maintenance and a leg of this whole setup, and do a fantastic job to keep those channels healthy and be able to take the water. So I don't know to what extent they are sized up to handle increased flow that could result from climate change.
If I remember from the climate vulnerability assessment report, there's also danger of increased flood in those tracts that border from North Stockton to Lodi with the Delta. And granted, there's not maybe as heavy as a population over there once you get past Trinity Park, but there's still property there, there's still communities there, and it would impact all of our lives. So that's another area we worry about. I guess you talk about priorities. I'm more worried at the moment about where you have the greatest concentration of people. Because you can always recover a field, you can't recover human life. But it's all a concern, and it has to all be managed in a way that we can protect ourselves and restore water systems as best as possible.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you so much. This is such a powerful concept that we're looking at right now, and we really hope we get a handle on it. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Chris. This was the third in our series on the effects of climate change. And I meant to have a slide up here with all the emails and such, but I can't seem to get a hold of it. So bear with me while I just kind of, maybe I can get it now. Deal with this. I know we're just a hair over time. So I just really appreciate that everybody was able to be here with us today and continue sharing the urgency of climate change, continue being very aware of the changes in our water system. And I want to thank you all and hope you will enjoy the rest of this beautiful, beautiful weekend. So,
thank you, Margot, and I really appreciate the opportunity. I thank Barbara for being a co-presenter this morning. It's really an honor. And then also that's my boss, Supervisor Miller. So thank you very much, and it's really a great honor to have been here this morning.
We appreciate
everybody. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate everybody tuning in.
I stuck my email in the chat and phone number in case somebody doesn't have it. So maybe Chris, if you do the same, and then you'll know how to find us all.
Oh, okay. I'll do that right now.
I know. Getting it together. This tech stuff is kind of
it's hard for small groups. And I'll be very honest with you. I mean, we're really lucky at Restore the Delta. We hire young people to facilitate all that, so we don't have to worry about it. We can do the So
exactly. We need kids. We need kids here.
Exactly.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
So the emails are going into the chat if anybody wants to jot them down quickly. And sign up to gather the emails from Restore the Delta. Very, very important resource for our area. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.